Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. We are going to be discussing the next set of chapters for Dragons of Spring Dawning. We are so close to the end of this trilogy and the end of the main storyline that we're reading right now. It's pretty exciting. We've only got one more class to finish up the last several chapters there. So last time we really talked about how they were kind of transition chapters that were getting us from point A to point B so we could set up for everything. And now these chapters, so much happens in them. We've set ourselves up and now we are going with it. We are getting to the conflict resolution. We're going to see whether good or evil wins. And so a lot happens in these chapters. There was a lot to talk about, but I really condensed it into just a couple of main points that I felt like were really, really important to discuss aspects of for our talk today. But if there's anything that you wanted to talk about that I don't end up mentioning in this class, go ahead and leave a comment below or on Twitter so I can make sure I address everything that happens. Because like I said, there's so many things. And a lot of them are like little piddly things. Not saying that they're not important, but there's just a lot of things to cover. And some of them are not necessarily like overarching things. They're just really important concepts or ideas that are happening in these chapters as all the events are happening. So again, if there's anything that you wished I had talked about or you want to discuss with me, make sure you leave a comment or let me know down below so I can address that and have a discussion with you. All right, let's go ahead and get into our recap and then we'll move on from there. So all the way back in chapter 4, which I don't know about you guys, but when I was reviewing my notes, I was like, man, we were such a long time ago. It seemed like, especially when I was flipping through the book, it's like to get back to chapter 4 to chapter 9, it just seems like you're like flipping forever to get back. So we finally get to hear Baram's story completely. So we did know a little bit about his story before, but now we heard the complete story of exactly what happened to him all those years ago when he got the gemstone. The group, which would be Tanis, Baram, Caramon, Tass, and, well, because it's not Flint anymore since, Tika. I was like, I know I'm missing somebody. And Tika all set out to Naraka from the point where Flint unfortunately left us and Fizbin left as well. They finally get to Naraka. All the troops for all of the High Lords are gathering at this point, so they think it's going to be easy to sneak in, and they try to do so, but they end up getting labeled as deserters, or they're not sure whether they're legit or not, so the group gets captured. But Tanis does go up to Kitiara and convinces her to take him with her instead, and leaves Caramon and the others to be captured and thrown in the dungeon. Baram ends up going kind of crazy in the cell as they're locked up, and he keeps talking about Josla calling to him. And at this time, Tanis is trying to earn Laurana back from Kitiara. He's trying to make a deal in order to set Laurana free instead of being sacrificed or anything else. Because Kitiara doesn't trust Tanis, she sends Gakhan to figure out what's going on with Tanis, and since she saw Caramon, him as well. And so we kind of follow Gakhan, and he ends up discovering that Baram is in the cells, which allows the group to escape when he tries to collect Baram from the cells and the others, which leads them, like I said, to escape. And then we've got Tika and Tass calling the guards away while Caramon follows Baram in order to see where Josla is calling him. Then we have Tanis and Kitiara in the meeting with all of the High Lords meeting together to meet with the Queen Takhisis, and he ends up pledging his loyalty to Queen Takhisis in order to fulfill his end of the bargain to get Laurana free, that Kitiara said at least would set Kitiara free. And as he is presenting the sword to Ariakis, as tradition allows, he ends up killing Ariakis with the help of a shadowed figure that tells him to go ahead and strike. And Caramon and Verum set off some alarms at this archway that Jocelyn is calling from, along with Tass and Tika, it seems, are in dire straits at the moment, if they're not dead already. So, like I said, a lot happens. It's a very suspenseful set of chapters, and it will be interesting to see where we can go from here and how the last set of chapters is going to finish out. Alright, let's start with kind of going back to the beginning. You know, in my first 2 episodes on our Dragonlance series, all the way back on Autumn Twilight, we talked about point of view. And point of view is always so important because that's how a reader gets knowledge, is through the narration. So we had 2 different times that we talked about point of view. And I'd like to discuss point of view yet again, because we've had a really long stretch of book since we have last discussed it. So we had all of the rest of Autumn Twilight, we had all of Winter Night, and now we've had most of Spring Dawning. So I think it's going to be interesting to talk about point of view, because point of view has changed since we talked about it back in the first 2 episodes. And you're probably thinking, like, how can point of view change when it's the same point of view, it's the same third person point of view? But as we discussed earlier, Tanis was the main focal point for our point of view. Even though we had times when we visited Tass's point of view, and we visited Caramon's point of view, and we visited Riverwind's point of view, and so on and so forth. All the characters have had their chance of being the viewpoint, along with it being a third person that we don't, like, it's the main character, as well as it being more of a narration of a generalization, a narrator that is not part of the story. But it always came back to Tanis, where Tanis, we talked about how he was the anchor. He was the one that was connected to all the other characters, so he was the one that knew them the best. So his point of view, as well as being the leader, was really our anchor, or the thing that kept us from falling apart, was that we always had Tanis to revolve back around to, and to be the main point of view, so we didn't get lost between jumping from character to character to character to character. So having this focal point with having so many characters and so many different viewpoints that we have switched between, Tanis was very, very important to keeping us grounded, to keeping us knowing exactly what was happening, where, when, and what people were doing, was to always come back to him. But after the group splits in 2 in the second book, Winter Night, we see the point of view change, because Tanis can no longer tell the story in its complete form. We have 2 groups that are doing things simultaneously, and both groups are important, and knowing what they're doing is important for us as a reader to know what's happening in the story and how we're progressing. There really wouldn't be much of a story if we didn't have Lorana's group included once we've split up into 2. So we have the change in the fact that Tanis is no longer the only anchor. We now have 2 anchors, because the point of view is mainly from Tanis when we have our 2 groups and we're focusing on the group that has Tanis in it. And then when we have Lorana's group, it's Lorana who is the anchor. We have point of views from the other characters as well in her group, but she's the one that always gets wrapped around to. She's the anchor for this particular group while they're separated. And it's very interesting because Lorana becomes very much a Tanis-like character. She becomes the person who's the one that has all the knowledge of everything. She's the tactician. She's the one that can lead her group and to know these are the steps that we should take. These are the things that we should be doing. I think this is the person that's best for this job. So we've got Tanis, who has always been the leader of this group and they trust implicitly. And we've got Lorana, who has changed so, I don't want to say so dramatically in the fact that, like, she's not the same person anymore, because she is. But she's really grown and developed and become a strong-willed woman and become very much the woman version of Tanis. Her mind has been opened. Her experiences have really matured her up into where she can be the tactician and she can be the leader, and she can be like, this is what we need to be doing, this is where people need to go, and here's the best person for the task. And everybody looks around to her. Strum, Tass, Flint, all of them look to her, along with the knights while she's, in that battle and everything like that, and she's promoted to general. But in the group that we have, that we mainly focus on those characters, she becomes the anchor that holds us down in that group. She's the one that takes charge. She's the one that knows what's going to be happening. And so even though we do see from Strum's perspective, we do see from Tass's perspective, we do see from Flint's, and so forth, Lorana really becomes our anchor and our cornerstone for that second group, that she then is mostly tied to her perspective, and it's always tied back around and tied back around and tied back around. So it's very interesting how we've got one anchor, and now then we have two anchors. And now I wanted to really talk about it because we have converged back together into being one main group that we're following. And Tanis is in that group, so now we're back to Tanis being the main anchor of our story. Until these chapters. So once Lorana is captured, we mostly stay with Tanis. And so the last set of chapters we had was mostly from Tanis's point of view. But now, everybody's kind of everywhere, and things are falling apart. I don't know if you've noticed this in these chapters, I'm sure you have, but everything is falling apart. Tanis is with Kitiara and is seeming to sell his soul in order to get Lorana. Caramon in that group is captured, and they don't know how they're going to get free. And then when they do get free, we've got Tess and Tika running one way, we got Caramon and Baram going the other way, and it just seems like all their planning, all the things that they wanted is falling apart, literally crumbling at the seams, and that there's no end in sight to this crumbling. So it's really interesting because now it's like Tanis is still our anchor, and then we've got this other group that doesn't really have a Tanis or a Lorana anymore. We've got the other characters that used to be more minimal, not minimal in the fact that they have a lesser part, but just minimal in their point of view. And now we've got to try and be an anchor or something that where people will know, the readers will know how and what's happening. And there's no anchor to hold them, to wrap around to be the main focal point that's going to direct our characters. So it's really interesting how we've come from one anchor, one person who we mostly focus on. Then we've got two anchors that we focus on, and they're very similar. And now we've got one anchor that's all by his lonesome. And that's the only reason why, for sure, that it's his point of view. And then we've got these characters who it's like, sometimes we're talking we're from Tika's point of view, sometimes we're from Tass's point of view, sometimes we're from Caramon. The only person we don't really get is Baram. But Baram also is one of our main characters. So not only are we splitting up the responsibility, but we also have this really, really cool effect from this point of view, is we get the chaos that's happening in our story physically with the events, and it's being fueled by our point of view. You're probably like, what do you mean by that? How can the point of view fuel our actual events? Well, with it being all over the place and there not being an anchor to hold us in place on what's happening and who we should be following and who we should be thinking about and what we should be thinking about, it enlarges the concern, enlarges the chaos that is happening with the group itself. The group that we came in with lost Tanis, and now they're split up, and Baram's running off to who knows where, and they're crumbling at the seams and jumping from person to person to person every time we've got something happening in this area. It's also going to make the readers be jumping around and more chaotic and wondering what's going to happen and wondering where they should be doing, where they should be going, who's going to lead this attempt when Tanis isn't here and Lorana isn't here, what's going to happen, and how are these characters who aren't the main point of view normally going to get it together enough to lead us and to lead themselves through this ending journey, and how is it going to end. So point of view, especially with it being a third person point of view where we're not limited to just one character, really works in the author's favor to confuse and compound the chaos for the readers. It really is a very interesting tool that, say, a first person can't have, because it's stuck to that one person, unless they have a first person that like bounces between two different characters, which is also possible. But that is, it's in itself, can only be between the two characters, and we can't be jumping around from this person to this person to this person to this person like we can in this story. So let me know what you think. If you get the feeling of chaos because you no longer have that anchor holding you down or not. I would really love to know if the point of view has affected your reading of it and affected your ability to stay calm and to run with what's happening. Because again, the point of view that we had that was the most anchoring us is the character that also anchors the people. So we're away from our characters are away from the person that anchors them and tells them what to do, and our point of view is scattered all over the place to different people at different times. So it's really, really cool effect that the authors use. So good. It really is amazing that they can keep in mind everything that they want and to know exactly which point of view will make the most effect. Now that there's no person that they can be like, this is the main person we're going to focus on at most times, and just do the relevant information from the other characters when it's important to see their point of view and not the main characters or the anchor characters' point of view. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the concept of evil in these stories. So throughout all these books, we really do see evil itself in the fact of things that have happened to this world. We see how evil affects the world. We see what their plans are, how they treat people. We see tons of examples of evil. We see their minions, their conduits. We see the Dragon High Lords, which is basically, especially with Kit and a little bit of Ariakis, it's how evil goes about this world and who they have help with in the world. But now we're actually seeing Queen Tychesis, and we're seeing evil as a whole, as a unit, with all of these guards and all these High Lords that are together and having to interact. And we see evil itself as a group and as an entity almost, because having so much of it in a large space, you really can see evil's personality in a way. I don't know any other way to kind of describe what I'm trying to say other than it being a personality, being a concept, being what it is. And throughout these books, even though I'm not saying this as a negative at all, because I do not think that it is a negative, but we haven't seen its complexity and its true nature in its essence throughout the books yet. So we have seen it kind of being a one-sided perspective where evil is evil and they do bad things and they torture people and they kill people and they try to take over the world. But evil has also been very powerful. It's also been very commanding. It's been winning. There has been a lot of effort against evil and bare minimum of winning, just barely scraping by where evil doesn't get its main goals. So it's kind of, it just seems like it's a power that is unstoppable and it just wipes through everything and anybody. And that's how we had in book 2. We've just been beaten down, beaten down, beaten down to where we're at the lowest point in our story, especially with our characters. And even though now we're being raised up, we still, at this moment, feel like everything is crumbling apart. Even throughout these whole chapters, like, everything is falling apart. Tanis is taken away from his group. Barum is running off to Josla. Tika and Tanis might possibly be dead. It's like, how much more can these authors take from us and fuel this chaos and for us to still win? At this point, if I was just reading for the first time, I would be thinking for sure that this is the end and that good might not win. It might be a very sad tale. Now, it's not for certain, and at this point, if you haven't read it, I'm sure you're not certain either, and you really hold out that hope for evil losing. But as we kind of are back to our low point at stage 2, even though we've seen this hope and we've seen that they're pulling themselves out of the gutter, we see that they are working hard, it seems like we're sliding back down that hill. It's like, okay, we made this progress. It seemed like we've got good dragons, we've got Lorana, we've got all this stuff going for us. And we've slowly been beaten back and beaten back and beaten back down the hill to where it's like, how is this going to end? And how is good going to win? Because evil is just so strong and it just seems to be countering them at every single turn. And then we get to see this nature of evil itself, but we get to really examine it by being close up with it and being around it, completely surrounded. When we see Tanis, and he's completely surrounded by all this evil and can really look at it and see it for himself. Evil's nature has just become more complex because we can now actually see it and be a bit more analytical toward it. And the main thing that I think really makes it a complex and really makes it an interesting thing in itself and really gives it more of a realistic quality is the fact that we've now seen evil's weakness. At this point, we've only seen its strength. Strength in numbers, strength in accountability, strength in everything that it does. The only thing that we've really seen where it's been beaten is with Strum. It's driven all the elves out of their home. It's driven deaths to most of the knights and corrupted it. There's distrust all over the place. We've seen draconians just swarming in and taking over everything. But we see this weakness now in the fact that evil begets itself, in the fact that it's turning in on itself. We see this with how there's no loyalty between High Lords. Each group is only loyal to its own High Lord, which means there's no intermixing, there's no intermingling, there's no teamwork. It's everyone out for themselves, other than their one general that they look out for. And the generals themselves, the High Lords, are all out for themselves. They all want to be the rulers, they all want to be the top dude. This is especially true between Kit and Ariakis, because Kit is almost at Ariakis' level. She's like the second to him, and she wants to be the first. And Ariakis knows she wants to be the first, and he doesn't want her to be. And so they have this hatred that they're pitting against each other and slamming against each other. And it's evil has turned in on itself now that it's all been gathered together. We're all falling apart themselves. And this weakness makes it more, like I said, complex and realistic because it itself is another entity. But it also gives us a good perspective in the fact that we've seen Good's weaknesses, which we talked about a couple episodes ago, how we're like, why would Lorana trust that evil would be honest and faithful to their word when they always lie? Same thing with the good dragons trusting the eggs that they wouldn't be harmed. So Good's weaknesses have been prominent, which is why we feel like evil's gonna win, is because Good has all these good morals that are their weakness. But now we see that evil has its own weakness as well. That for all its power, for all its corruptibility, for all its strength, it's really gonna just destroy itself. And evil always turns on itself because everybody in their own nature, the nature of the beast, as it were, is to turn in on itself and to become self-attacking, versus Good that likes to work together and to make a unit. Evil cannot do that, at least in this world. Every single good against evil works its own ways in different worlds, in different books that we read. But in this one, the main weakness is the fact that there is no loyalty, there's no working together, there's no common ground for it to stand on. They're just all standing on their own little islands, afraid to move and fall off and be destroyed by themselves. Something kind of going along with this whole concept that I really would like to read directly from the book that I think is really important is Tanis' realization of human nature. Now he realizes it in terms of himself, in his terms of his relationship with Kitiara and why he wanted her so much, and why he realizes now that he doesn't want her, and all the mistakes that she's made and who she really is. But it talks about human nature that I find really interesting, and I want to try and say that this is kind of a sentient being weakness that he kind of describes, in the fact that even though the phrase is like, oh, we're just human, but a lot of this weakness is permeated in throughout all different creatures that are sentient. The dwarves, the kinder, the elves, the humans, all of them that are sentient have their own weaknesses and have problems. And even though he does make this a comment about human nature, I feel like it's a lot, just maybe in different qualities or less qualities in all sentient beings, and that Tanis is being very realizing this quality in general, and realizing it in himself along with what the humans are, because he is half human. That makes it so interesting and complex, and really explains how evil gets to this point that it's at. I'm probably not making any sense. Please let me know down below if you're just like, what, through this whole section? Let me read it, and then maybe you'll actually, be able to follow what I'm saying, instead of me just trying to describe what I mean before I read the dang thing. Get it together, Amy, really. Okay, page 278. Suddenly Tanis felt the great distance between them. She was supremely, superbly human. This is about Kit. For only the humans were endowed with the lust for power so strong that the raw passion of their nature could be easily corrupted. The humans' belief lives, whereas the humans' brief lives were as flames that could burn with a pure light that gold moon's light, like strums of shattered sun. Or the flame could destroy a searing fire that consumed all in its path. He had warmed his cold, sluggish elven blood by that fire. He had nurtured the flame in his heart. Now he saw himself as he would become, as he had seen the bodies of those who died in the flames of Tarsus. A mass of charred flesh, the heart blackened and still. It was his due, the price he must pay. He would lay his soul upon this woman's altar as another might lay a handful of silver upon a pillow. He owed Lorana that much. She had suffered enough because of him. His death would not free her, but his life might. So again, I think that this quality, the fact that humans have this fire that he says that humans have, but in my opinion, it's really all sentient beings have, in the fact that we've seen it from the elves as well as the humans, like the knights and things like that. And I haven't seen as much of the dwarves, but a little bit from the dwarves as well, in their own self-protectiveness, the brief moment that we saw them in book 2. That makes evil get where it's at, is because everyone is corruptible. Everybody is got this longing for power, this longing for being better than everybody else, that really leaves evil to be something that compounds on itself and gets really huge and powerful, but also destroys itself. Because everybody is grappling to be the one on top, there is that lack of loyalty, there is that lack of unity, that lack of anything other than themselves. So I know this little section of my concept on evil for this book is a little bit all over the place when it comes to the portion I was talking about with Tanis. I hope I was pretty clear till then, but that part that I just read, I feel like really puts a pinprick, even if he is only relating it to humans, and saying that he himself, his elven portion is not that way, and it's his human portion that reached out for that. I do really believe that he just doesn't see that it does encompass everybody, and that's why the whole world has been corrupted. All of the races have been corrupted, even if some of them have pulled themselves together a bit, or certain characters have pulled themselves together. It really does permeate the whole story. This realization that the passion and urge to be the best really has affected and corrupted the world as a whole, especially in humans, because as we've known if you read constantly, as we know in other books, as well as in these books, that humans are the most easily which is a concept like in Lord of the Rings as well, that humans are so easily corrupted and so easily power hungry that it makes it hard for good to shine through at times and good to beat through. But now we see the weaknesses, now we see how we've gotten here, now we see really how this evil has manifested and is allowed to walk free in this world. So we see the complexity of it, we see how realistic it is, we can see that it's not something that can't be beaten, it's just the drives that drive it are so much more from anger and hurt and something that really is the emotions that humans use to drive themselves on big things. It's really the motivating factors is what makes us that way we are here at this point, and that we have this weakness that we can then attack upon and possibly win with. Then there's the concept of Kit and Tanis in these sets of chapters. We've talked again and again about the times that Tanis and Kit and their relationship versus Lorana's relationship with Tanis and all that kind of stuff. But now I really want to put it from the point of view of Kitiara herself. And Kitiara's relationship with Tanis is very important in this story, just as many of the other concepts of the different relationships that people have, but in this story in general. But Kitiara and Tanis are kind of an anchor in themselves. And I feel like Lorana and Tanis's relationship is a little bit of a anchor in themselves as well. But I do feel like the fact that Kit and Tanis's relationship is so strong and keeps coming back up and keeps coming back up, in these next several chapters that we're going to finish with, we're going to see the true importance of Kitiara and Tanis' relationship. And we're starting to see that little glimmer of that importance now. And we have in previous chapters as well, but now specifically these sets of chapters really shine on Kitiara and her love for Tanis. Even though she keeps denying it, we've had Lord Soft now say twice that Tanis is going to make her weak because of her love for him. And she denies it, and she plays it off as if she wants to crush and own Tanis because she has never owned him. He's a very self-made person. He's not something who's easily manipulated, and that's what her dream goal is. But Lord Soft, and I'm guessing you as well as me, are not fooled. She claims to not love him, she claims to have no need of him, but that she just merely wants him and wants to destroy who he is. And yet she keeps making these allowances for him. She keeps bargaining with him. She keeps having openings to try and keep him with her, and she keeps trying to take them. Even after he left her back in Flotsam, which, would be, you would think, a sign to be like, no, this person is just going to be toying with me. They're not really part of the army. They don't really want me. This is going to be something that I throw away because I'm not going to be manipulated anymore by my enemy. But she keeps letting Tanis manipulate her. And I'm not saying that necessarily that Tanis sees it as he's manipulating her, or that she thinks that Tanis is manipulating her. But really, Tanis gets his way with Kitiara fairly easily. And even though she chased down the boat in Flotsam, and she might have been able to kill him, but she might not have if she had not gotten lost in the storm. And you would think that she would just kill him on sight here. Being like, nope, you betrayed me, you aren't really on my side, I'm done with you. Kill him. She has no problems killing any of her previous lovers or any of the previous people that she's killed. She killed Strum, who was her friend. And in the end, all she said is that, oh, well, Strum would have died valiantly and he would have understood, and that's that. I don't have anything to feel guilty of. But she keeps Tanis around, and she keeps wanting to find ways to keep him. And denies adamantly, way too much, some might say, that she doesn't love him, that she really wants to control him. But either way, whether it is love or if it isn't love, go ahead and actually I'd love to know what you think down below if you do think it's love or not. But either way, her connection with Tanis manipulates her and controls her and makes it so she wouldn't make the choices that she would for anybody else. It does change her choices and her ideas of what she should be doing. She's throwing out possibly her deal with Lord Soth in order to give Tanis what he wants, which is a live Laurana, and giving him options in order to make that happen. So she's putting herself in danger. She's also putting herself in danger in the fact that she's presenting this guy to the queen, and if he doesn't follow through with it, she will be the one that's put to death as well for bringing this person and suggesting this person to the Queen of Darkness, who doesn't take forgiveness very well. Like, she doesn't forgive anybody. She just kills them off. Just as she didn't care that Ariakis died, and she's like, whatever, like, my loyal servant who did anything and everything for me and was winning me my war, he can just die if he's gonna die. Like, why should I live to figure? So she's putting herself in danger. She's making choices she wouldn't normally make. She's being affected by her relationship with Tanis, whether she agrees that it's love or not, whether it's love or not on her end, or if she's telling the truth. It seems a lot like love. And it seems like Lord Soth is right, that he is going to be her master whenever he's involved, because she doesn't want to have to let him go, and she wants him for herself, even though she knows that, one, she can't get him and be the person that she's going to be, and two, he is now realizing that he would rather have Laurana than her. She just tries to act like she'll be okay with that, and that she can own him anyway. So obviously all relationships go through, are important and go through changes and those kind of things, and they contribute directly to the story. I think we're not quite done with knowing how this is going to work out in the end with this relationship. I think the last several chapters we'll have to maybe visit again or not, we'll see. But I do feel like we're going to see how this relationship, especially on Kit's part, is going to affect the ending and the outcome that we get at the end of this story, for good or for evil, as Tika said. So it's very interesting to see how so much rides on this one relationship that they have, and it's been riding on it for a lot of this book, and the fact that Laurana acts based on this relationship that Tanis has, and Kitiara acts based on this relationship that they have, and Tanis acts based on this relationship that he has. That's why he left Caramon, is because he believed that Kitiara would not kill him and keep him around. How he could think that would be the case, especially after he betrayed her. Tanis is the one that knows Kitiara better than we do, at least, in the fact that I would have thought she would just kill him off, but obviously she has a weak spot for him, and he recognizes that weak spot. We're going to see how that goes in the next set of chapters. Interesting stuff. Alright, next thing is our nitty gritty. As always, we end with our nitty gritty, and there's quite a few things that I'd like to mention and keep in mind for the last little bit of our book here. One thing that was just funny, and that's the first thing, and that's the fact that Toad was killed by the Kinders at Kindermarming, and I just find that hilarious. That, like, the worst High Lord and the most stupid High Lord is killed off by a bunch of Kinder. Like, that is awesome. I just imagine, like, a whole bunch of, like, little Tasses just, like, attacking him and, like, running him out of town, even though obviously they did kill him. And that one Kinder became a hero, and that's awesome. In my opinion, that is just awesome. So I just think that that's, like, the most funny thing ever. I know, like, this book is, like, so serious at this point, but when it's mentioned that Toad was killed off by the Kinder, it's just, like, you can't keep a straight face. You're just like, thank goodness as well, because that guy's an idiot. And he just deserved to die a terrible death, and not an honorable death. Anyway, moving on from that, The next thing I want us to keep in mind is that there was a voice and a shrouded figure that helps Tanis out, especially to help Tanis kill Ariakis. So we've got an unknown player at this point in the game. Very unknown in the fact that Tanis doesn't recognize the voice, Tanis doesn't recognize the figure. You couldn't see the figure enough to know actually any description of him or her. I mean, it doesn't really specify for, at least that I remember, whether it was a him or a her, but I always think that in generally when they say about this voice and this shrouded figure, it seems like it's more of a masculine type description for it. And it's very interesting because why is this random player that's at the end of our book helping Tanis? What does it mean? How is this going to be fulfilled? Are we going to find out who this figure is? That kind of stuff. It leaves a lot of questions at a point where you're thinking we should be getting answers, not questions. So again, we're going to see if we find out who this shadowy figure is and this voice that has helped him kill Ariakis, and what was the point for this person to want Ariakis dead. You would think that if he is standing behind the Queen of Darkness, that he would be on the side of the Queen, but instead he helps Tanis kill Ariakis. So we're going to see where that goes. So keep that in mind. If you have any comments or any guesses on who you think this figure is, or who you think is helping Tanis at this point, and this new mysterious helper is, comment down below. I'd love to discuss your theories and to see what you have to say about who you think is actually behind the help that Tanis gets. The next thing is that the authors are starting to close up loose ends. So even though we are getting new questions, which are like, it's already this late in the book, how are we getting new questions? But we also are getting a lot of things tied up. A lot of the loose ends that we're not really sure about, the holes, are getting closed up in the fact of we got all the background information on Gakhan, and the fact that there was so much happening on Kitiara's end with Gakhan following them and following the staff and all this other stuff, that some of these instances that you're not sure how things came about this way now have answers. The fact that the Quishu village was burned up and we didn't know who had done it or why, or if there's any survivors, and now we find out exactly what happened. We find out why Flotsam happened the way it happened. That's because Kit knew who was there, and we didn't know how she knew or why she was there to begin with. We just knew that she was there and that she recognized that Tanis was there and everything like that, and she's burning the city anyway, and we now know what the goals were and how that was happening, why that happened. So it's very interesting stuff to hear from Gakhan, all the things that's happening in the background that don't necessarily affect us when we're originally reading it, but just make things more clarified and make it so questions that we had before have now been answered before we're finishing up this huge story from the last 3 books. And then the last thing I'd like to mention is just that the dream has happened again. Tass and Tika, though we have no clue whether they're dead or not, they definitely look like they're dying. Tass has sprung the trap and Tika's been bashed over the head by her enemies, so it seems like they're going to die like they did in the dream. And once again, the dream has come up in general. We still don't know anything about this dream. We don't know why, other than that it was the nightmare created by the dragon, with the whole dragon orb situation with Sylvanisty, but we don't know why it's actually happening in real life. We don't know if the dream was meant to be something particular, like trying to tell them something, if the nightmare came from something, if the nightmare came from what they saw in the future, and why are some things happening from the dream and other things not happening from the dream, in order of timeline, in order of events, in order of people dying versus not dying, because we've had a couple who have done what was in the dream and not died, or it died at a different point, or something like that. But when we've gotten some things that are the same, so it's very interesting. And maybe during these last chapters, maybe we're going to see exactly if the dream had any importance or not, if we're going to have that wrapped up or not, because we still have quite a few questions when it comes to the dream and the reality of it. Let me know down below if you think Tass and Tika are now out of the game and if that is the last that we saw of them. or if they are going to survive and continue going in our next set. Whew. Okay, that was quite a bit of just jumbling all that information at you. Hopefully you enjoyed this class and that I brought up some interesting topics for you. Once again, I know that there was a lot to talk about in these sets of chapters, so if there's anything that I missed or anything that you would like to have a conversation with me about, go ahead and comment down below, or you're welcome to go to my Twitter, which is at fantasyfiction1, and go ahead and talk to me there. I would love to have a conversation, love to learn from you, love to talk about things that I haven't talked about on the channel yet at all. So yeah, thanks for joining the class. We are going to be finishing up the rest of the book, so go ahead and finish reading the last several chapters. That's chapter 10 through the end, which for me, it starts on page 326, all the way until 380, which is the very last page of the book with our little poem that usually happens at the end. We're going to see if good or evil wins, and then we'll be done with our first set of books on this channel and for our classes, and we'll be able to start something new. So that's kind of pretty exciting. All right, I will see you next time. Hopefully it will be a character analysis, I think, next. So I'll see you then. Bye.